When you picture rural Maine, places like North Yarmouth, you likely see the postcard image: sunlit pastures, dense forests, and historic family farms anchoring the landscape. But that peaceful exterior hides a quiet, brutal fight for survival. The families working this land are actively engaged in a two-front war against economic and regulatory forces that threaten to erase them completely. The first threat comes from the geographic expansion of surrounding cities. As nearby municipalities grow, economic sprawl pushes outward, driving up the price of rural land. This triggers a property tax mechanic known as highest and best use. Under this standard, local governments assess farmland based on what a developer would pay to turn it into a dense suburban development. As those hypothetical property values skyrocket, the actual farmers are taxed out of their own properties. Maintaining the rural landscape requires confronting the raw economics of suburban real estate. Even if a farmer manages to pay those inflated taxes and keep the land, they immediately face a second barrier: the legal labyrinth of selling the food they actually grow. Over the last century, state and federal food safety protocols, enforced by agencies like the FDA and USDA, were written to regulate massive, centralized factory farms, not your local agricultural neighbor. These agencies demand commercial-grade infrastructure. To legally sell basic goods like poultry or raw milk to the person living next door, a homesteader is often required to build separate commercial kitchens, implement expensive lab testing, and navigate licensing designed for industrial conveyor belts. By demanding commercial-scale compliance, these regulations effectively make traditional face-to-face food sales illegal for small operations that cannot absorb the massive financial overhead. If a community takes no legal action to intercept these train crushers, the combined weight of high taxes and federal mandates will inevitably force local farms to close and pave the way for subdivisions. To counter these threats, the state of Maine developed specific legal defense mechanisms. The first is the Farm and Open Space Tax Law. Under the current use program, land isn't assessed on the real estate market. Municipalities tax land strictly on its agricultural use, drastically lowering the burden. To apply this rate, acreage breaks down into categories like cropland, orchards, and pasture land, reflecting the farm's varied terrain. By shrinking the tax bill to match the actual agricultural revenue, this program removes the crushing financial pressure that forces farmers to liquidate their property to housing developers. The current use law successfully builds a protective legal wall around the physical dirt of the farm, securing the land itself for future generations. However, protecting the physical soil accomplishes very little if the farmer is still legally prohibited from profitably selling the harvest. That requires a second defense mechanism, the 2017 Maine Food Sovereignty Act, which was later reinforced by the state's 2021 Constitutional Right to Food Amendment. The concept of food sovereignty gives municipal governments the authority to pass local ordinances that exempt direct face-to-face transactions between local producers and consumers from state licensing and inspection rules. This legislation carves out a legal safe haven from industrial-scale regulatory interference, meaning a homesteader can legally sell fresh goods straight from their property to a neighbor without needing a $1 million commercial facility. Food sovereignty shifts the balance of power away from distant federal agencies and places the control of local food distribution squarely in the hands of the community. For North Yarmouth, these two laws function as the foundation of a survival strategy. The two policies work in tandem. The tax law creates the financial breathing room to keep the land, while the Sovereignty Ordinance provides the legal market access to sustain the farm's business. This protection is not automatic. To activate it, a town government must proactively promote the tax program to its residents and hold a formal vote to adopt the Food Sovereignty Ordinance into municipal law. Several neighboring Maine towns, including Gray, Chelsea, and Townell, have already successfully voted to enact these exact ordinances to protect their own borders. Preserving a town's agricultural heritage does not happen by accident. It is the direct result of proactive, strategic local legislation. This strategy secures the town's physical landscape and its economic independence. This legal blueprint allows a town to actively choose self-reliance. By passing these laws, a municipality ensures decentralized food security and places trust in the community rather than relying on corporate consolidation. A town's rural character and local food supply will only survive the 21st century if its citizens are willing to legally choose to defend it.